Hey fellow gamers, Chatty Sisa here. If you watched the latest PlayStation State of Play during February, you've probably already seen the new story trailer for 007 First Light, which was introduced during the show. What you might have missed though is the following cover story interview done by Game Informer to explain the differences between our new Bond game and IOI's previous hit series, the Hitman, or the interview on how IOI approached creating the new Bond character for 007 First Light. So let's have a look at some of the details together. The story trailer from State of Play has shown us a little bit more of Bond's background and his recruitment, but also new parts of the game we haven't seen yet, with a good look at the previously criticized female protagonists, plenty of action, and yes, the typical Bond cars. The feedback for the trailer was very positive. Many viewers compared it to Uncharted, but in a good way. Others have pointed out the new character is like a mix between Daniel Craig and Pierce Brosnan, but again positively, and praised the choice of the original actor Patrick Gibson. Although a few also did miss his resemblance to Henry from KCD. But we can learn more about his character also through the exclusive Game Informer interview, where Martin Emborg, the narrative and cinematic designer, has revealed how they drew inspiration from all the Bond sources, the books, the comics and the movies of course. The real challenge came with creating this new origin story. We all know the 007 Agent Bond. Most of us have grown up with the movies probably, but IOI's approach was trying to introduce who the person behind the agent is. Starting with sticking to the core qualities that Bond has, but removing the experience which he gains only later in life. Emborg has correctly pointed out that, for example, Connery's Bond seemed from time to time almost bored, as this was already a man who's seen a lot in his life and was harder to be surprised by something. While IOI's Bond is experiencing many situations for the first time, and so will naturally have different reactions here. To be able to keep the character's main important qualities, they did rely first and foremost on Fleming's books. The studio praised also Patrick Gibson as an extremely focused actor, who likes the action and is fun to be around, so someone who for them checked all the boxes. Aside from that, they wanted to focus not just on the action, like shooting, fighting or the stealth parts of the gameplay, but also show Bond's social skills in terms of showing his charm and bluffing in some situations. That's something that gives Bond more options to resolve the situations within the game, while staying true to the original character. Another exclusive cover story interview with Andreas Krog, who's the gameplay director, has then compared IOI's new James Bond versus the Hitman to understand the differences between the two and the studio's approach to both games. What they have in common is giving the player more options to be creative in resolving a situation. There are various paths, tools, character interactions and so on. The experiences from applying stealth in the Hitman games have helped them a lot to create the Bond stealth options, but the combat was something they definitely tried to improve in 007 First Light with some new mechanics. Talking about the stealth options though, Bond has the advantage of being able to talk his way out of trouble once his cover is blown, unlike in other games where the main character is then forced to enter into a combat situation. For many players, this is often the point where they simply restart a mission as they prefer not to fight their way through, and in this case the bluff or distraction options in 007 First Light are rather giving the player a chance to simply continue the mission without facing your enemies in a fight or the need to restart the whole mission. Of course, there are players who will enjoy the combat, and it won't be a surprise to those that previously compared the new trailer to Uncharted that this is the game which also the gameplay director has mentioned in his interview as an inspiration. The combat in the Hitman series was always considered to be a last resort if your stealth failed, and therefore wasn't as deeply developed as was needed for the new Bond game. So logically they were looking for good examples externally which would work the best. Driving was another feature in the game where the studio had to look for inspiration elsewhere. In this case, the studio relied on game devs who had previous experiences with this feature from various other games. They've chosen to prioritize a bit more the arcade driving style rather than a realistic one, meaning drifting around sharp corners, impossible stunts, and so on. Of course, they still added some realistic elements to it, like car damage or obstacle destruction, but in general they've paid attention to the driving being fun, also for those players who are maybe not so great with driving vehicles in games. Which, if you know some of my playthroughs from the channel, is an approach I can only sincerely appreciate. I'd definitely prefer not to replay a driving section 22 times like I did last year within Mafia: The Old Country. The multitude of various options on how to approach a mission is giving the player a bigger variety of choosing their own playstyle. In general, the 007 First Light game was designed to make the player move forward one way or another and not being stuck in one spot for a long time.
Those are some good learnings there where obviously these needed to be much more scripted to kind of have a good forward momentum feeling and getting enemies from everywhere to lead you on and getting that experience where it's not super fun to get shot from behind. So trying to author that experience more. So if I stay here and I'm this far in the whole combat experience, then enemies are coming from here. If I move forward 10-15 meters, then they start coming from here instead. And then a good learning was also just to have these more unique moments to kind of spawn in enemies and create drama along that path. You've seen our airstrip encounter where we get cars joining the battlefield, driving in on the airstrip there and getting spawning guys from the cars, right? And that creates kind of a flow and fantasy in that small area there, and some dynamism also to drive you forward there.
What I'm still missing so far is a little bit more about the story. Of course, I'm not expecting, neither do I want to, the studio to release some major spoilers. But we only know that our young James Bond needs to stop a rogue 009 agent and a coup together with his mentor John Greenway, and that will be traveling across the globe. The story is supposed to be very linear, but I'm wondering if and to what extent our gameplay style can or will affect the outcome of the game. I'm not expecting this to have deep RPG decision trees and various possible outcomes. That is already confirmed that this game is not having it. But it would be nice to have a meaningful impact on the story from the general playstyle in some way or another. If I decide to shoot my way through everyone, will that impact in some way how Bond is being perceived by others, by their reactions or interactions? How much of the story will feel just like a generic action, stealth and shooter game, and how much of the Bond elements will be incorporated that will make the story feel unique? The game will also be featured in the upcoming IGN Fan Fest on the 25th and 26th of February, which will also be streaming live, for example, on IGN's YouTube channel, aside from other social media platforms. The game will be one of the headliners for the event, and that means we could get some more exclusive content here or further developers' comments that could reveal more about the game. I will of course post a respective link in the description as usual. So far the reception of the trailers, gameplay info and all the interviews has been very positive by the players, and although I still have my reservations related to how much this younger Bond version will be reimagined and what's the story actually like, as that will be an important part for me, the game looks so far to be fun, dynamic, and with the delayed release window postponed to the end of May, the studio should also have enough time to thoroughly polish it. But I'd love to hear your impressions from this new trailer and the updated information on the gameplay. Are you going to play the game when it releases? Is there something you're specifically looking forward to? Or maybe something that you're hoping that will not be included in the game? Let me know in the comment section below, and if you like the vid, it would be much appreciated if you would hit the like or subscribe button. Thank you very much already in advance, stay tuned and game on!